now know what Florida teenager Trayvon Martin was doing in the moments before he was killed by George Zimmerman, a neighborhood watch volunteer. The 17-year-old Trayvon Martin was talking on the phone with his 16-year-old girlfriend. He was not casing houses, as Zimmerman suggested. He was coming back to the neighborhood with a bag of Skittles and was chased by a vigilante with a 9mm handgun. There has been finally been some movement from law enforcement in this case, even though George Zimmerman has still not been arrested. The Department of Justice and the FBI are opening a formal investigation into the killing of Trayvon Martin. In Florida, the Seminole County State Attorney has ordered a grand jury to convene on April 10th. Florida Governor Rick Scott has asked the Florida Department of Law Enforcement to offer appropriate resources. Trayvon's 16-year-old girlfriend told the Martin family lawyer about her final call with Trayvon.
He said his man was watching him, so he put his hoodie on.
Keep in mind, George Zimmerman was sitting in the safety and comfort of his SUV, and he then decided to pursue Trayvon Martin, even though a dispatcher told him not to. The girlfriend told Trayvon to run. Later on, the girlfriend was still on the phone with Trayvon when George Zimmerman confronted him.
I said, what you following me from? And the man from said, what you doing around here? Somebody push Trayvon because they had said this down.
She called right back, but he didn't answer. He had died from a gunshot wound to the chest. Here's the Martin family lawyer, Benjamin Crump.
He kept pursuing Trayvon Martin. And how do we know? Because this young lady connects the dots. She connects the dots. She completely blows Zimmerman absurd self-defense claim out of the water. We're going to turn this over to the Department of Justice in their investigation because the family does not trust the Sanford Police Department and anything to do with their investigation.
And there is more. NBC News believes Zimmerman used a racial slur on the 911 call.
Which entrance is that he's heading towards?
The back entrance.
Let's bring in Reverend Al Sharpton, host of Politics Nation here on MSNBC, and Charles Blow, columnist for the New York Times. Gentlemen, thanks for your time tonight. Reverend, a lot of things have changed in the last 24 hours. The racial slur would be relevant to motive, particularly a hate crime. What's your take on all of this and what's transpired?
Well, I think the racial slur, as well as the phone calls that the Mr. Zimmerman, the killer in this case, had made several reports over the last several months, all of which identified race. It seemed as though there was always this preoccupation with race. Even some people have said that know him. He seemed to really be obsessive on fighting crime and focusing on young black males. All of this would be part of a consideration on a hate crime. And I think that clearly, as you said, that the statements by this young lady blows any self-defense. I think it was already blown because he says on the 911 tape that he was pursuing Trayvon, that Trayvon was not pursuing him. So how's that self-defense? But with this young lady and the phone logs showing the time she was speaking to him will give real credence to her testimony, because though they will try in a trial to cross-examine her and blow her statements out, how do they explain the phone logs and the fact he was talking to her at this time? How do you talk to your girlfriend if you're casing out houses to rob and you have no tools, no weapons, nothing to do a robbery? I think this is devastating for Zimmerman's story.
Charles, if you could compare the girlfriend's account with all the other witnesses who said that they heard someone crying for help. Put this all together for us. What do you think?
Right. Her statement is prior to the other 911 call, so there is no overlap between the 911 tapes that we've already heard and the statement that we've heard from the young lady. However, there does appear to be some overlap between Zimmerman's 911 call and what this young lady describes, and some of it is not necessarily joshing the way that it should. For instance, she explains that Trayvon notices Zimmerman watching him before he puts on his hoodie. Well, what you hear Zimmerman saying, this guy has on a hoodie, and there's some kind of equivocation on whether or not he can identify race. Well, if the kid had his hooded sweatshirt down, you would definitely know that he was black before when you called 911.
So based on these phone calls, it is very clear that this man pursued the victim. I mean, absolutely pursued him. How much more evidence does the district attorney need?
It is absolutely clear, if you are to believe this young lady's testimony, and if you listen to what Zimmerman is saying himself, he is pursuing Trayvon. And this child is trying to get away from him, and the girlfriend is trying to help him figure out a way to get away, whether he will run or whether he will walk fast or whatever that case may be. And what happens is, and this is very important, Ed, there becomes an exchange, according to this young lady, where Trayvon turns to Zimmerman and says, why are you following me? And that is the opportunity for Zimmerman to say, I am in charge of the neighborhood watch. I just want to make sure that you belong here, or something to that effect. To identify yourself as the authority and what you are doing following him. Because to that child, any other child, you are a stranger, and we have all taught our children to stay away from strangers and to get away from them if they are following you. Well, and he does not seize that opportunity. That is a big problem.
The young Martin teenager might have thought he was a sexual predator.
Anything. You thought he was anything.
Reverend, you're going down there, and I've asked the question on radio. The city commissioners, the mayor, the county commissioners, the police chief, where are these folks?
Well, that's a good question that we're going to raise. Not only where are they, if you have 911 tapes where he's saying he's pursuing Trayvon, if he himself did not do what he said he would do to the dispatcher, not only did the dispatcher, when he called 911, tell him, we don't need you to follow Trayvon, he agreed and then did the opposite, then how do you at any point, if you're the police, let him go with a self-defense claim when you have 911 tapes that does the opposite of that? That is why he should have been arrested and should still be arrested right now, because there is no evidence to support self-defense, even under Florida law, because the evidence they have says he was the one that was pursuing, he was not under threat. If he has any other evidence, then he has to present that at a trial. They can't take his word for that and say, no, let me explain that, because then they are now allowing him to do what they're not allowing others to do, and that is testify without a trial.
Here's more from the family lawyer, Benjamin Crump, today at the press conference.
Why didn't the Sanford Police Department do a drug and alcohol analysis on him? They did one on Trayvon Martin, who was dead on the ground. Why didn't they do it on George Zimmerman? You ask yourself, why didn't they take a background check on the man who had just killed this kid in cold blood? They did a background check on Trayvon Martin.
If this is true, what does this say about the police investigation, Mr. Blow?
Well, it really does raise a lot of questions, and it's very unsettling to hear that. And like you say, if that is true, it points to the idea that you are assuming that the person who is the victim and is dead is somehow the aggressor in this case, based only on the person who pulled the triggers. And that is a very, very disturbing precedent to set. And that says a lot to the community as a whole, to say, if you are killed, we will take the killer's opinion over yours, even in death. That is a very, very interesting kind of comment to make about a dead child.
And we should point out that ABC News reported that the Neighborhood Watch, Zimmerman's Neighborhood Watch, was not registered, and Neighborhood Watch volunteers are not supposed to be carrying firearms.
No, I think that the last two things that you said and that Charles Blow said are important. One, I think the Department of Justice has to also investigate the role of the police and how they behave. behaved and what they did and did not do and why. And second, you would have to question in the Justice Department investigation, if the Neighborhood Watch was not registered, then why were they treating him like he was an official Neighborhood Watch person? And why was he even treated in interrogation in that way?
And do you see that this redefining the rules of Neighborhood Watch and responsibilities, I mean, it would seem to me that there's going to have to be a full examination of exactly how that program works.
How it works and how the police dealt with an unregistered, self-appointed Neighborhood Watchman.
Reverend Al Sharpton, Charles Blow, we'll do more. I appreciate your time tonight. Thanks so much.